The first thing I saw when I woke up was my fiancée, the Ice Queen CEO, Isabella Sterling, looking down at me with an air of detached superiority. "Ethan," she said, "our engagement is over." I looked at her face, flawless, beautiful, and as cold as a marble statue. And I smiled. Perfect. Just perfect. This was exactly what I wanted. "Ethan, our engagement is over." Isabella Sterling's voice was like the sharpest icicle of winter, utterly devoid of warmth. She stood beside my hospital bed, dressed in a bespoke black power suit that made her look less like a visitor and more like a monarch delivering a decree. I blinked, my gaze shifting from the sterile ceiling tiles to her. The scent of antiseptic still hung in the air, and my arm felt stiff from the foredrip. I distinctly remembered dying at my desk after a solid month of 80-hour work weeks. So, how did I wake up here? Memories flooded my mind like a tidal wave. I, Ethan Vance, had been reborn into the world of a power fantasy novel I'd been reading. And of course, I'd been cast as the tragic, similarly named side character, a playboy heir who, aside from a handsome face and a mountain of cash, was utterly useless. In the ice-cold beauty before me was one of the novel's secondary female characters, my fiancée, Isabella Sterling. She was a business prodigy, a genius who had single-handedly elevated her family's corporation to new heights, an untouchable queen in the world of high finance. In the original story, this Ethan was madly in love with her. For her, he'd made an enemy of the world, only to be financially ruined and left for dead by Isabella and the novel's protagonist. A truly miserable end. And now I was that chump. The timeline was precise. The original Ethan had just crashed his car while drunk driving. Isabella was visiting the hospital to deliver the final blow, breaking off the engagement. According to the script, I was supposed to desperately grab her hand, crying and begging her not to leave, only to be mercilessly thrown aside. My dignity shattered. As I thought of this, the suffocating desperation and bitterness of the original Ethan surged in my chest. But I wasn't him. I worked myself to death in my last life. This time, with $1 billion fortune at my disposal, I just wanted to coast and finally enjoy life, romance, and corporate empires. They could all go to hell. I looked into Isabella's beautiful eyes, which were filled with undisguised disgust and impatience, and I let the corner of my mouth curl into what could only be described as a brilliant smile. "Okay," I said. My voice was a little rough from disuse, but the relief and cheerfulness in it were genuine. The barrage of insults and scathing remarks Isabella had prepared died in her throat. For the first time, a flicker of genuine shock appeared in her placid, deep-set eyes. "What did you say?" I said, "Okay." I pushed myself up, slowly sitting up in the bed. I casually pulled the needle from the back of my hand, my movements far too smooth for someone who was supposed to be unconscious moments ago. I met her gaze and repeated, enunciating every word, "Call off the engagement." "I agree." I couldn't be happier. Isabella's brow furrowed. The Ethan she knew was a pathetic loser who could do nothing but cling, throw tantrums, and grovel. Not this unervingly calm man. "Ethan, what game are you playing now?" Her voice grew colder, playing hard to get. "Drop the act. It's pathetic. Ms. Sterling, have you been reading too many romance novels?" I scoffed. "I've just come to a simple realization. You're not good enough for me." "That's right. You heard me. In the novel, you are the untouchable goddess, but only because the original Ethan was a complete and utter fool. Now the soul inside this body is mine. A soul that's read the script and just wants to kick back and enjoy the ride." Isabella, the Ice Queen. Sterling was once again stunned. She had probably never in her entire life been spoken to in such tone. "You mean what?" I threw off the blankets and stepped onto the cold tile floor, my bare feet padding silently as I walked toward her. At 6 feet 2 inches, I could easily look down on her. I watched as her eyes widened slightly in shock, and I leaned in close to her ear, speaking in a voice only we could hear. "Isabella, I used to be blind. Now I can see, so get the hell out of my world." Without giving her another glance, I walked to the door and pulled it open. "Oh, and by the way," I said, looking back over my shoulder and tipping my chin at her. Make sure you settle the hospital bill on your way out. You broke up with me while you were visiting after all. Consider it a parting gift. Outside the door, Isabella's assistant and bodyguard stared at me, their jaws hanging open. I ignored them and pressed the elevator button. Behind me, the hospital room was utterly silent. I knew Isabella was probably experiencing the most profound confusion of her life. But this was just the beginning. The real show was yet to come. I arrived back at the Vance family's sprawling Greenwich estate just before dawn. The massive house was empty. The original Ethan's parents spent most of their time abroad, leaving their vast fortune and business empire in the hands of their only son, an empire he had nearly driven into the ground. I took a hot shower, slipped into a pair of silk pajamas, and collapsed onto the king-size bed that could comfortably sleep 5. It was so soft it could make a grown man weep. This was the life. In my previous existence, I'd lived in a cramped studio apartment, survived on cheap takeout, and endured daily verbal abuse from my boss, all for a meager salary. What I had now was something my former self couldn't even have dreamed of. As for Isabella Sterling, a fictional character, a name on a page, my life would only get better without her. I picked up my iPhone and began to assess the mess the original Ethan had left behind. A media company on the verge of bankruptcy, a board of directors filled with sycophantic yes-men, and a handful of aspiring starlets waiting to be scooped up by the novel's protagonist. I let out a cold laugh and dialed my assistant. "Hello, Mr. Vance. You're awake," a fawning voice answered. "Conference room in 30 minutes. Every single board member 1 minute late, and you can clean out your desk." I hung up without waiting for a reply. Half an hour later, I sauntered into the Vance Media Group's conference room, wearing my pajamas and slippers. The assembled group of impeccably dressed executives stood in stunned silence, their eyes practically bugging out of their heads. Mr. Vance, sit," they said. I walked to the head of the table, dropped into the chair, and propped my feet up on the polished mahogany. I called this meeting for one reason. I scanned the room, looking at the parasites who had been bleeding the company dry in the novel. The smile on my face grew colder. As of this moment, every single one of you is fired. The room went dead silent. They all thought they had misheard. "Mr. Vance, what is the meaning of this?" A bald middle-aged man, the company's VP, was the first to jump up. "We're the founding members of this company." "Founding members?" I cleaned out my ear with my pinky. "You mean to tell me that after you've nearly bankrupted the company, I'm supposed to keep a bunch of useless old leeches on my payroll?" I picked up a folder from the table and threw it at his face. "VP Peterson, you embezzled $3 million last month to buy your college-aged mistress a new car. Do I need to read the bank transfers and hotel receipts out loud?" Peterson's face turned the color of a ripe plum. I turned to another executive. "Director Miller, did you really think no one knew about you and that starlet on your casting couch? Is that how the production budget gets creatively spent? And you, Manager Walsh?" With every name I called, another face turned ashen. This was all information that came out much later in the novel. I was just fast-forwarding the timeline. Seeing their sweaty, terrified faces filled me with a singular, satisfying thought. Awesome. "So, do we all understand each other now?" I asked lazily. "Good. Now pack your things and get out." "Ethan, you can't do this." "Well, security." I snapped my fingers. A dozen burly security guards immediately entered the room. "Take out the trash." The conference room briefly filled with shouts and pleas, then fell silent. In an instant, the company's upper management was gone. My new assistant, a young man named David Wright, stood to the side, trembling like a leaf. He hadn't dared to make a sound the entire time. In the novel, he was a highly capable employee who was constantly suppressed by his superiors for being too principled. I walked over and clapped him on the shoulder. "Starting today, you're the CEO." David's head snapped up, his face a mask of disbelief. "Me, Mr. Vance? I can't." "I said you can, so you can." I yawned. "The company is yours. Run it however you see fit. Don't bother me with the details. I only have one rule, sir." David's eyes were already starting to burn with a new fire. "Don't lose my money. I just want to sit back and collect the checks." With that lazy declaration, I turned and left. Oh, one more thing, I said, pausing at the door. Terminate the contract for that trainee, Tiffany Fox. I'll cover the penalty fee. We don't need people who plan to sleep their way to the top. Tiffany Fox, one of the original protagonist's future conquests and a key character who had trampled on the original Ethan to get ahead. I had no interest in funding my rival's love life. After handling all that, I stretched languidly, feeling refreshed and clear-headed. All right, company business settled. Now it was time to enjoy my wonderful new life of leisure. First stop, a culinary tour of America's greatest cuisines. My life of coasting began at an exclusive, unlisted restaurant tucked away in a Greenwich Village alley. The novel had mentioned it briefly. A private kitchen beloved by a legendary food critic specializing in lost historical recipes and serving only 3 tables a night. I drove my flashy Lamborghini to the mouth of the alley where I was promptly stopped. Sorry, sir, no cars beyond this point. I tossed the keys to the valet and strolled down the lane. Cobblestone streets, historic brownstones, and the faint, delicious aroma of cooking in the air immediately set a calming mood. I pushed open an unassuming wooden door, and a woman in a chic black dress greeted me. Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation? No. I shook my head, but I have a feeling your chef is in a good mood today and will make an exception. The hostess looked puzzled. I smiled and lowered my voice. Tell your chef. A message for a Scafier has arrived. This was the code phrase the novel's protagonist used at a table here. An old pact between the chef and a dear friend. Now it was mine. As expected, the hostess disappeared and quickly returned to usher me inside with the utmost respect. The courtyard was small, but exquisitely arranged. A small table was set beneath a fragrant magnolia tree. The moment I sat down, I caught a sweet, fresh scent. It wasn't magnolia. It was something unique, like fresh-cut grass after a spring rain, with a subtle hint of creamy vanilla. I turned my head instinctively. At the next table, a young woman in a white summer dress sat with her back partially to me. She was holding a small DSLR camera, taking photos of a cluster of orchids in the courtyard. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting a soft, golden glow around her. She had a cascade of dark hair, and her skin was as smooth and pale as polished alabaster. Her profile was delicate and refined, like a fairy from another world. My heart, without any warning, skipped a beat. Was this the female lead, Chloe Evans, the one described in the book as kind, lovely, from a powerful family who ends up living happily ever after with the protagonist? I remembered the book mentioning her passion for photography, especially flowers. I hadn't expected to meet her so soon. As I was studying her, she seemed to sense my gaze and turn her head. Our eyes met. Hers were incredibly bright, clear, and deep like a starry night sky. She seemed surprised at first, but then a friendly smile graced her lips, revealing 2 faint dimples on her cheeks. I was done for. I could hear my own heart hammering in my chest. As a man who had been single for 30 years in his past life, I had absolutely no defense against this level of adorable. I felt my cheeks flush and quickly looked away, pretending to admire the scenery. Just then, a waiter carrying a tranche of soup stumbled, about to spill the scalding liquid all over Chloe. Look out! Almost on pure instinct, I shot up from my chair, closed the distance in a single step, and pulled Chloe into my arms. With my other hand, I reached out and caught the tipping tranche, steadying it perfectly. The whole thing took less than a second. The scorching edge of the ceramic burned my palm, but I didn't even flinch. The woman in my arms was soft and smelled incredible, her impact sending a jolt through my entire body. Are you okay? Chloe looked up from my embrace, her face etched with concern as she reached for my hand. I'm fine. I released her and placed the tranche back on the waiter's tray. Just a little burn. The waiter was pale with fright, apologizing profusely, but Chloe wouldn't let go of my hand. I could see an angry red mark already forming on my palm. How can you be fine? It's already red. Her delicate eyebrows knitted together in a worried frown. She pulled me over to a nearby water faucet without asking. Quick, run it under the cold water. The cool stream soothed the stinging pain and also cooled my overheating brain. I watched as she carefully held my hand under the water, her long eyelashes like tiny brushes sweeping against my heart. "My name is Chloe Evans. What's yours?" she asked, looking up at me with a smile that made her eyes curve into crescents. "Thank you, my hero. Ethan Vance." I looked into her eyes and, on some strange impulse, added, "You can call me Ethan." "Ethan." She tilted her head, her dimples appearing again. "Then I'll call you Ethan from now on, and you can call me Chloe." "Chloe." I repeated the name in my mind and felt it was sweeter than any honey in the world. It seemed this life of coasting wasn't going to be so boring after all. "Ethan, does your hand still hurt?" Chloe was looking at my hand with an expression of pure anxiety. We had ended up combining our tables. Seeing her wide, doe-like eyes, the minor sting from the burn had long since vanished from my mind. "It doesn't hurt anymore," I said, giving my hand a little shake to prove it. "Thick skin." "No, it's not." She puffed out her cheeks and rummaged through her small purse, pulling out a small, elegant tube of ointment. "This is a special burn cream my mom makes. It works wonders. Let me put some on for you." Without waiting for an answer, she took my hand and gently squeezed a bit of the clear ointment onto my palm, spreading it with her slender fingers. Her touch was cool and soft, like a feather brushing against my skin. I felt a jolt of electricity shoot up my arm, and my entire body went rigid. God knows, for a man who had lived 2 lives and possessed enough theoretical knowledge to write a dissertation on romance, my heart was now wildly out of control from a simple touch. This was embarrassing. "There!" She looked at her work with satisfaction and gave me a huge smile. "That should feel better soon." "Thanks." I pulled my hand back, feeling the skin on my palm burn, even hotter than before. Just then, my phone began vibrating incessantly. I pulled it out and saw a news alert that nearly blinded me. Hashtag Vance Media Group shakes up board, and its new CEO is hashtag Ethan Vance, the Slacker King. Hashtag Mystery Man David. Wright Engineers Hostile Takeover. Vance Media stock soars hashtag. I clicked on the hashtag Ethan Vance, the Slacker King, and felt my eyebrow twitch. The feed was filled with analysis from financial gurus and curious onlookers. Holy crap, this move was genius. First, he fires the entire board, making it look like the company's imploding to bait the short sellers. Then, under the new CEO, David Wright, they buy back the stock at rock bottom and go long, absolutely demolishing the shorts. Vance Media must have cleared $1 billion on that move alone. And the craziest part? Check out Vance Media's official Twitter account at 8 a.m. this morning. They posted, "Our boss is sleeping in today. All company matters will be handled by CEO, David Wright." The sheer audacity, the confidence, this is next level for chess right here. You're thinking too small. This is a masterclass in delegating. The boss just chills while empowering his team, unlocking their maximum potential. Ethan Vance isn't a playboy. He's a business savant, the founder of slacker capitalism. Me? I swear all I wanted was to sleep in. David Wright, you overachieving, mind-reading maniac. Wow, Ethan, you're amazing. Chloe leaned over to look at my phone, her eyes sparkling with admiration. "So, you're the legendary business genius who makes billions in his sleep?" I opened my mouth, but for a moment, I had no idea how to explain. Was I supposed to tell her it was all a beautiful accident? No, absolutely not. In front of a beautiful woman, one must always maintain an aura of profound mystery. So, I let out a deep sigh, gazed thoughtfully at the ceiling, and said, "Just the basics. Nothing to get excited about." Chloe giggled at my deadpan delivery. Meanwhile, in the tallest skyscraper in downtown Manhattan, inside the CEO's office of Sterling Corp., Isabella Sterling stared at the glaring red trending topics on her screen. The hand holding her coffee cup trembled ever so slightly for the first time. "Ethan Vance, founder of Slacker Capitalism," she murmured, her brow knitted tightly. The man who, in her eyes, with a useless trust fund brat skilled only in throwing tantrums and wasting money, had overnight become a business savant in the eyes of the world. How is this possible? Ms. Sterling's assistant knocked and entered cautiously. "Our corporate intelligence assets inside Vance Media have all been turned. They said Mr. Vance's compensation package was too good to refuse, and they said they were tired of the corporate backstabbing and wanted to learn how to coast with him. Crash! The coffee cup slipped from Isabella's hand and shattered on the floor. She stared at the mess, her mind in complete turmoil. For the first time, she realized that she had never truly known the man named Ethan Vance. Was he a failure, or had he been playing a part all along? And if it was all an act, then what he said to her at the hospital? Isabella's heart clenched with a strange, unfamiliar pang. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. Find out which charity gala Ethan Vance is attending tonight. She had to know the truth. As night fell, the city lights glittered. Kensington Corp's annual charity gala was the event of the season, a gathering of the city's most powerful figures. Ordinarily, I would have avoided it. These events are incredibly boring, but Chloe mentioned her father would be there and wanted to formally introduce me. An invitation for my future father-in-law. That was a command performance. I put on a tailored suit, and when I walked into the ballroom with Chloe on my arm, we captured nearly every eye in the room. Isn't that Chloe Evans, the general's daughter? Who is that man with her? He's gorgeous. You don't know? That's Ethan Vance, the slacker king who's been all over the news. So that's him. He looks nothing like the spoiled playboy everyone talked about. I ignored the murmurs around us. My eyes were only for Chloe. She was wearing a pale blue gown that shimmered like a night sky, looking every bit the fairy princess. The buffet area was laden with exquisite desserts, and Chloe's eyes lit up. Ethan, I want that little cake, she whispered, pointing at a strawberry mousse. Stay here. I smiled gently, ruffling her hair, and turned toward the table. Just as I picked up a plate, a familiar, icy voice spoke from behind me. Ethan, I turned. Isabella Sterling was standing there holding a glass of red wine. She wore a stunning silver evening gown and still carried herself like a queen. But tonight, her gaze held a new layer of complexity. Miss Sterling, can I help you? I asked lazily, placing a slice of strawberry mousse on my plate, followed by a piece of tiramisu. What are you really trying to do? She asked, her eyes fixed on me, as if searching for a crack in my facade. Me? I added a mango pudding to the plate. Then, after a moment's thought, a slice of black forest cake. I'm getting some cake for my Chloe. Isn't it obvious? I made sure to emphasize the words, my Chloe. Isabella's expression visibly tightened. Her gaze flickered past me to where Chloe was waiting, looking over with anticipation. The two women's eyes met in midair. One was as cold as frost, the other as warm as the sun. Ethan, Chloe Evans isn't right for you. Isabella looked back at me, a trace of irritation in her voice that she herself didn't seem to notice. Don't use your mind games on her. I almost laughed out loud. Miss Sterling, aren't you overstepping a bit when you're not engaged anymore? Who I'm with and how I'm with them is none of your damn business. I tried to walk past her with a plate of desserts. Stop. She blocked my path. You think I don't know what this is about? All these stunts you're pulling. It's all to get my attention, to make me regret my decision. Well, let me tell you something, Ethan. It's not going to work. I looked at her astounding level of self-importance and felt a mixture of anger and amusement. How on earth did this woman's brain work? I didn't bother arguing. I simply stepped around her and walked back to Chloe. Sorry for the wait, my little dessert fiend, I said, handing her the plate with a fond smile. Wow, thank you, Ethan. Chloe beamed and picked up the strawberry mousse. She took a large spoonful, but instead of eating it herself, she held it up to my lips. You get the first bite. I smiled and accepted. Sweet, but not cloying. It melted in my mouth just like her. From a distance, the scene was a dagger in Isabella Sterling's heart. She saw the genuine, gentle smile on Ethan's face, a smile she had never seen before. The old Ethan was always fawning, desperate, or hysterical around her. He had never smiled like that. Isabella's hand tightened around her wine glass, her knuckles turning white. Her chest felt tight, as if something was blocking her airway. Just then, a jarring voice cut through the air. Well, if it isn't Ethan Vance. Heard you made a killing recently. What's the deal? Gave up on models and clubs to become a professional sim. A slick, smarmy trust fund kid strolled over, a mocking grin on his face. He was Chad Kensington, heir to Kensington Corp and a minor villain from the novel. He'd always been infatuated with Isabella and had given the original Ethan no end of trouble. Before I could say a word, Chloe stepped in front of me like a protective mother hen. "You can't talk to Ethan like that. Apologize to him." Chad sneered. "Ms. Evans, don't let him fool you. Everyone in this city knows what he is. A useless leech living off his family's money." "He is not useless." Chloe's face flushed with anger. I gently pulled her back, signaling for her to calm down. Then I looked at Chad and smiled. "Chad Kensington, is it? I hear your father is bidding on that big Hudson Yards redevelopment project." Chad froze. "So what if he is?" "Oh, nothing," I shrugged. "Just curious. I had drinks with a buddy from the City Planning Commission yesterday. He mentioned that particular project is complicated." My words had barely left my mouth when Chad's expression changed. To his horror, his father, the chairman of Kensington Corp, had appeared behind him and smacked him squarely on the back of the head. "You idiot! Is that any way to speak to Mr. Vance? Apologize this instant." The elder Mr. Kensington practically bowed to me, his face a mask of fawning desperation. "Mr. Vance, my son is a fool. Please don't take him seriously about the Hudson Yards project. If you could put in a good word with the commission, I would be eternally grateful." The entire hall fell silent. Everyone stared at me as if I were some kind of mythical creature. I, however, simply plucked a macaron from a passing waiter's tray and handed it to Chloe. "Try this one. I bet it's good." It was as if nothing had happened. From across the room, Isabella Sterling watched me, the center of attention, the man who could make the chairman of Kensington Corp grovel with a single sentence. The confusion in her eyes morphed into profound shock. Was this really the Ethan Vance she thought she knew? The small incident at the gala was less than an appetizer for me, but for everyone else, it was a seismic event. Overnight, the name Ethan Vance transformed from a joke into an enigma. The next morning, I got a call from David Wright. His voice was trembling with excitement. "Mr. Vance, we did it. We acquired Starbright Pictures." "Oh," I replied. I was lounging on chaise in the garden, enjoying the sun and sipping a rare first flush Darjeeling tea. "Good to know. Mr. Vance, you're not excited. Starbright was our biggest competitor, and it's owned by the Kensingtons." David sounded frantic on the other end, like he'd thrown a knockout punch that landed on a pillow. I made an offhand comment at the gala, and he had immediately interpreted it as an order: destroy the Kensingtons. So he had assembled his team overnight, leveraged our massive cash reserves, and launched a lightning-fast hostile takeover of Starbright Pictures on the stock market. Kensington Corporation, already reeling from the Hudson Yards fiasco, couldn't fight back. Overnight, Starbright had a new owner. I listened to David's report and yawned. "Good work. Give yourself and the team a bonus and take the next month off paid." "What?" "Mr. Vance, we just closed the deal. There's still so much integration work, too." "That's your problem," I interrupted lazily. "Don't bother me. I'm spending time with my girlfriend." After hanging up, I looked over at Chloe, who was playing with a kitten nearby. My mood was perfect. The kitten was a rag doll I bought on a whim yesterday and named Midas. Chloe had brought her own pet, a golden retriever named Gatsby. At that moment, Gatsby had his head nudged up against Midas, trying to curry favor while Midas regally tapped Gatsby's head with a soft paw. It was just like me and Chloe. No, wait, the other way around. Just like the aloof me and the affectionate Chloe. "Ethan, look, Midas and Gatsby are getting along so well." Chloe laughed happily. "Yep," I nodded. "A perfect match." Chloe's face instantly turned a shade of crimson like a ripe apple. She looked down, mumbling, "Who's a perfect match with you?" Seeing her shy, adorable reaction, I couldn't help but laugh. Life was this good. Why would anyone want to struggle? Coasting was the way to go. Meanwhile, at Sterling Corp, the atmosphere was arctic. "What did you say? Starbright Pictures was acquired by Vance Media?" Isabella stared at her assistant, her voice laced with disbelief. "Yes, Miss Sterling. The news broke this morning. The rumor is Ethan Vance gave the order offhandedly at the gala last night." The assistant's own voice was shaking. Isabella felt a wave of dizziness. To ruin a multi-billion-dollar company overnight was just an offhand command to